Hey guys, it's Krystal, and the Pixel 7 Pro has been out for a few months now, and overall it's been a great phone to use. There's been a couple updates since the release that have made the overall experience even better, but I gotta say my favorite thing has been the camera. Now, a few days ago, there was a pretty big update that covered a lot of bugs and glitches, but along with that came some new features on board, like recorder speaker labels where you can pinpoint and label different speakers in a single recording. We also now have VPN by Google One to increase privacy and security on your phone. You can browse the web knowing that you have a private connection, but above all, if you're a Pixel 7 or 7 Pro user, you can use it at no extra cost. Now, this is probably not the first Pixel 7 Pro video you've seen, but if it is, comparing this phone to last year's, it's really not all that different design and hardware wise. Apart from the camera module here, it is a little more unified looking now. And honestly, this is probably what the 6 Pro should have been, but it's nice to see the improvements regardless. Now, if we take a look at the front, this has a 6.7-inch Quad HD OLED display. It's nice and big, colors look bright and punchy. You get up to 1000 nits when viewing HDR and 1500 nits at peak brightness, which is super helpful when you're outside. Now, I will say it did struggle a bit in the brightest of bright conditions, so I found it helpful to go into settings and turn adaptive brightness off, which helped tremendously. Overall, the phone experience has been solid. Battery life is pretty good. It's a nice looking phone. I do wish though that the phone came in a smaller version for the Pro. If you go smaller, you'd have to go for the 7 non-Pro, and you do lose some of those camera advantages. So that's why I've been mainly using the Pro. Now let's talk cameras, starting with the rear cameras. We have 3 on the back. There's a 50 megapixel wide camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 48 megapixel telephoto with the laser detect autofocus sensor on the back as well. So there's lots of cameras and a lot that you can do with them, but I think the coolest thing about using the 7 Pro is that you don't really have to think much while shooting or even post-shooting because it does a lot of the work for you. Surprisingly, in a lot of circumstances, Google's automatic adjustments end up working really well. And of course, if you do want to have control over those tweaks yourself, you do have that option too. Now, one of my favorite features is Magic Eraser, and while this isn't new, it definitely feels improved. And what impressed me most here is not only how well it works, but the fact that it'll even suggest it on its own. Now for this photo, I wanted to get a picture in front of this lovely and humongous Christmas tree, and there's a lot of children running around, a lot of people doing the same thing, taking photos, and before I even went into the edit, the Magic Eraser prompt popped up, you click it, and it'll highlight all of the people and subjects that it suggests to be removed. Once you click that, boom, it's all gone. Now, another cool little camera feature is photo and face unblur, which will work with the rear and selfie camera to sharpen up and unblur your images. But the coolest thing about it is that you can go back into even your older photos or even photos that weren't even taken on your Pixel device and use it there as well. Now, if face unblur was applied automatically, you can tell just by scrolling through your photos, there's a little icon at the top right of the photo that is for face unblur, and it basically just tells you that the camera automatically detected that there was some motion and it cleared it up for you. And if you zoom in, you can tell that my face looks pretty clear and sharp. If you do want to apply the unblurring yourself, you just go into the edit toggle on the bottom. The unblur is usually one of the first suggestions. And for this photo specifically, it was pretty windy when I was taking a picture of this plant. And as you can see, things are a little fuzzy. So just tap on unblur, let it do its thing. And as you can see, things are looking a little sharper when we do the before and after there. It doesn't always make a super crazy difference, but it does tend to make your photo look a bit better. I can see this especially useful if you're taking a photo of maybe your pet or a child, something that's constantly moving. We do have a photo editing suggestion at the bottom of this photo as well, suggesting that we blur the background for a different look. You can choose to ignore these, but most of the time it does add to the shot, making it look even cooler. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We can also mess with the blur here to make it look like a portrait mode shot. I feel like that looks pretty good in the middle there. Save. And there it is. Another standout feature on here is super res zoom, which kind of solidifies the fact that it's pretty hard to take a photo that isn't sharp and clear right off the bat. If you're shooting anything past 2.5x, it'll still look pretty clear. And especially if you're shooting between 2.5 and 5x, it'll combine a picture from the wide angle and the telephoto to make one clear image collectively. It is worth noting that you can push this even further, even past 15x, because then that zoom stabilization will kick in to help you shoot the photo, and once it processes, it does make a pretty big difference. Now, jumping into the camera app itself is very clean looking, very easy to navigate. On the bottom, we have all of our different modes that you can go through, starting with night sight for those lower light photos, motion for those action and long exposure shots. We have portrait mode with 1x and 2x zoom. We have our regular camera mode here with all of our different focal lengths going up to 5x, but you can go beyond that and still get pretty high res looking pictures. We also have video, cinematic mode for the more cinematic looking shots, and beyond that, the panorama photosphere and your Google Lens. The selfie camera, which you're seeing right now, can record up to 4K 60. It's got a 10.8 megapixel camera with an aperture of 2.2, and you can get a lot of cool looking shots with this. Lots of photos to look through here, but I think amongst my favorite are the ultra-wide camera pictures, because the ultra-wide camera itself opens up for a lot of creative looking shots. And even though it's a camera with the lowest megapixel count, you can still get really sharp and great looking photos. I mean, like the colors look great. In this specific one, again, didn't have to do much. I actually set this on a tripod with a timer and just let it do its thing. Now on the opposite spectrum, I've also really grown an appreciation for macro photography, and this is something that is 7 Pro exclusive, and once it's toggled on, you can get super close up to your subject. In this specific photo, I got really close to a leaf. It's backlit, so you can really see those individual fragments of the leaf. I did push it to its limits a little bit here. I think if I was a little further back, it might have been a slight bit sharper, but it's still a crazy looking shot. Let's talk about portrait mode, because I'm always so impressed with what the Pixel 7 Pro can capture when it comes to portrait mode photos, not only with the rear camera, but with the selfie camera as well. I will say in most cases, these portrait mode pictures are gonna look amazing. The colors pop, everything is nice and sharp. The edges are pretty good too. It's not always perfect. Sometimes it does struggle with some of those edges, but most of the time you're gonna get a pretty solid photo. I'm also really impressed with how it handles multiple subjects. The camera does a great job at identifying what needs to be in focus and what doesn't. And on top of that, this isn't just a portrait exclusive thing, but the real tone technology is really shining in these photos. Real tone is baked into the camera algorithms to authentically capture different skin tones, and I really appreciate this because not only does it do a good job at tuning the tones evenly, but also consistently exposing things right and just making different tones look realistic and true to life. It enhances the image in a way that doesn't feel too over the top and still feels pretty natural. Now, like I said, portrait selfies are just as impressive as those rear camera portrait pictures. It really is one of my favorite features on this phone. They look just as clear and sharp, colors look great, and I like the fact that you can also get a wider angle if you want to, and it really feels impossible to take a bad selfie with this phone. Overall, the camera on the Pixel 7 Pro is incredibly solid across the board. Here's a look at what you can capture from ultra wide to telephoto and everything in between. Honestly, I don't have much bad to say when it comes to the photo side of things. Video though is a different story. Now, it's not bad by any means, and it actually has improved over the past few Pixel devices, and you also get a lot more flexibility now with things like cinematic mode, where you can even lock onto a subject and blur out the background beautifully. There's also different stabilization modes like cinematic pan that lets you focus on your subject and give your footage a nice smooth gliding effect. Now, I do wish that it shot natively at 4K 24, because even though it's nice to see all these other advancements, that extra step would have taken it a step further. So that wraps up my in-depth look at the Pixel 7 Pro. Obviously, I gravitate a lot towards the camera, but if there's anything in particular that you guys have enjoyed, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and hasta luego.